All right, so I am here with my first illustrious guest,
Yeah, we're here,
Joshua
baby.
Kissi, the man, the myth, the legend, my best friend, my brother,
Appreciate it. Love you,
and from another mother, but it could be the same one depending on how we look some days.
man.
And again, it's just like this first episode of SHEREN, trying to do a conversational series where I get my black Joe Rogan on and, talk about art, talk about, just the topics of the moment and, just get to some honesty. I really feel like there's a lot of things going on and we tend not to be able to really get like, what's the young person's perspective, the young, artist's perspective, and whether that be even about business, but I just wanted to really start with some topics. I know we were discussing the other day and like,
Yeah.
trying to get prepared for this, where we were saying, what's going on with some of these marketing situations with some of these companies, like what are
Yeah,
they
man.
doing, and trying to figure out what's really real, what's real and what's revenue.
Yeah.
I know you we were talking about a company that can't be named, but
Yeah, no
just in regards to them being unable or seemingly unable or unwanting to really come to a situation where they're like truly and genuinely just trying to invest in the community, uplift the community, elevate what we're trying to do, and not just essentially, creating a marketing campaign around, people's lives and their talent. And share your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Because I know you've been dealing with it in a real way. So
No, absolutely. First off, congratulations. This is amazing. As always, inspired, proud of you. Love everything you do. And I think the more and more people get closer to your genius, the more and more I'm happy, right? So these are the steps that we take in order to get there. If anybody doesn't know me, I'm Joshua Kissi, photographer, creative director, co-founder of Tonal, co-founder of Street Etiquette previously. And yeah, I'm here to just kind of tell my story, continue to kind of elevate what we've been doing collectively. But as people don't know, me and Cleon have been friends for a very, very, very long time, almost brothers at this point. And a lot of things we talk about, just stay within us. But sometimes we feel like, man, if people were able to hear this or take something from this conversation, it'll be beneficial for everybody, right? And even to us, right? It's not like we know all the answers and we're just here spitting the facts. Like we're still trying to figure it out as well. And I think it's important to have that dialogue within the community as well. But hold on, did you hear that in the back? My bad.
not anything. We can keep going.
You don't hear it?
Unedited, man.
Okay.
We unedited. We're unmastered. We're just flowing, man.
Bet.
I don't care
No,
about
no.
this sort of perfection, like in that sort
Yeah,
of.
no, it's all good. You know, these ambulances and motorcycles, just trying to make
That's
sure you're good.
real New York right there.
It is New York in that way. But yeah, man, I think right now we're in an interesting season where, at least personally for me, I've been creating work around the culture in different facets, whether from a diasporic point of view, from on the continent point of view. We have the release of Black is King. We have, Seen in Black. We have like there's so many things that I think have been going on just in my own personal ecosystem, but as well as other artists, right? Like there's so much good work happening. Like September issues right now, from Adrian's cover of GQ to the Vanity Fair cover with Breonna Taylor painting by Amy Sherrill, and like, there's just so much Black magazine cover content coverage. And my hope is like even after this, like all of these talented artists, whether stills, motion, or painting, are able to still like have that space, right? And I think that's the most important thing is like I'll work with impermanence, I'll work long term and not just in trauma. But news is based on immediacy and not necessarily long term mentality. So it's like, what do people need to know right now? But the interesting thing is like what people need to know right now is also what they should have known 10 years ago. So it's like you're catching up to this space, to inform who haven't been informed, but as well as inspire the people that have been informed and have been living this life. So I think it's just that in between of these two edges trying to touch. So whether you're a brand or an agency or a media outlet, everybody's trying to do the work now, right? So the work looks very differently than it did before, where artists or collaborators or Black artists or Black collaborators couldn't necessarily say the things that they could say now without being viewed as like hostile, being viewed as negative, rather than just being truthful about their experience. Where it's like, hey, like I feel otherized within this industry. Like I don't feel like people necessarily get me, and I had to limit the layers of myself that I bring to the table just in order for us to win, right? But it's like, what does that win really look like when people are kind of like filtering through themselves just to like be a fraction of themselves in the space. And that's always going to be a conversation. But I think for artists right now, this is the time to kind of get your voice out there. This is the time to amplify the themes and things that are about yourself that are important. And like the nuance is great, right? Because our existence only happens in this like polarity where it's either good or bad. It's either this or that. It's either Democrat or Republican. It's either this, like black or white. And I think that's important for the general context, but I think there needs to be more nuanced stories for people to get that, you know, it's not as like, you know, a broad stroke that we think it is. And there's like a lot more stories and narratives that need to be put out there for us to make an informed decision, right? So I think as artists now, or as a storyteller, or somebody that just wants to get their voice out there, I think it's important to pay attention to those things, but also ask yourself like, what is missing from the general narrative and how does my vision kind of help to kind of fulfill that gap?
I think that's all true. It almost goes back to, you know, something we briefly discussed with Seeing Black about just like, do you feel that your story is represented in all the artists that were featured in the first volume? And just me as a person who's coming up from, you know, my specific area, sometimes I wonder, it's like, there seems to be such a like a grasping for that opportunity, whether it's a September Mag cover or whether it's a opportunity to be Black, whether it's a campaign with Nike or a cover for a magazine. It's almost like there's not enough. There's so much incredible Black talent and art being like created every single day. Sometimes I'm always like I just understand for the amount of great people that absolutely get a shine and they finally get that opportunity for working for 10 years, 5 years. They finally got their one chance to shine that they've been working on. It's almost like you always think like, damn, that person got it and that's fantastic and they should get more. But it's like, is there even more for anyone else to get? Like there's only 12 covers a year. There's only like a few campaigns for a few companies. It's almost like no matter how many people get it or get their opportunity, there's still gonna be, you know, the multitudes that never get a chance, which is why there's this like sort of desperation that seems to be always there. That's sort of like, when is my chance? Did I miss it this time? Should I have been there? Should I have been, you know, owned a bit stronger? And I've even told you recently about like my feelings with regard to that. I was feeling like there's a certain things that I felt like I missed because I just wasn't either paying enough attention or wasn't aggressive enough, or there was two spots and I was the third, or, you know, you came a day late. And I was like, even with that abundance, which is beautiful, and we need to create more of it, it's like, how do we create more of it? How do we get to a place where it's not this sort of lacking of constant, like, this lacking of constant exposure, where it becomes like a trend, like it becomes a trend, like, oh, this is Black lives and Black, you know, activism's in the moment now, but is it going to be the moment later? You know, we said something the other day what I thought was like pretty like dope and profound, but it was about like, you know, these things, they have a long life to them. Like if there was something about like the traumas are long, so the treatment should be long too. And I always feel like we keep getting into this place where like Blackness is like, it's episodic. It's like, you know, George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, these like horrible things happen. And it's like, because of our pain, you know, like some sort of sympathetic bone or carrot is like thrown to us where it's not like well lived. You know, Aurora with her like 15% project. Like those are the things that I think are like, forget what you're saying right now. Forget your little banner on your homepage. Forget your Instagram post. Commit to something long term. I want your 15% in this sort of space. And I know everything has to be based on population count, but like those sort of more impactful, long-lived, you know, like treatments and therapeutics.
Yeah, I think that's important. What you're saying is like super important because like unfortunately, normally we didn't have the answer that happens in long term, right? And that's why when we talk about Black visibility and Black permanence, like that's what we're kind of speaking to, is like, because of this scarcity mindset when it comes to art in general, it always feels like there could only be one or two or three when it comes to us, especially. In general, the art world is a very like, you know, polarizing place in general, but when you add the layers of individuality and diversity, and especially Blackness, like that becomes even smaller, right? So even within Seeing Black and selecting and being open to those 80 photographers, we understood that the responsibility was to show as much nuance as possible, not for every single artist, but for every single story that could be, you know, conveyed from an artist, right? So if you look at a certain person's work that's, you know, based in Minneapolis, like a Bobby Rogers, and be like, I see myself within that work, you know, then that becomes more about the collective idea rather than an individual. Like, no, I need to see my work. Even though this person's work is similar to mine, I would much rather see mine. And I think we don't have enough institutional like gain, and we don't have enough institutional like variables on our side where we're able to kind of feel, you know, wanted, understood, felt, where, you know, just because one institution goes up and one thing goes up, we don't feel like that, you know, just out of box experience. And I understand the privilege I have and the privilege a lot of Black working photographers or Black working artists have to be able to do that because of the work that they put into it, but also realizing that everybody doesn't get a fair shot. But how do we make sure that more fairness and more accessibility and more understanding happens in these conversations, rather than I'm sitting on this panel, I'm sitting on this platform, so I know more than you on the other side, and I'm just like keeping all the information to myself. Like, and I think that's the things that we're trying to move away from, but it's still keep the quality of art, right? Like, I think there's something to be said about artists who have been working at their craft for a very, very, very long time and get the things that they deserve within that, right? Like, so there still needs to be critique, there still needs to be structure, there still needs to be that's not really based around like the white gaze. And, you know, a lot of people state that, but it's like, it's based on like our internal acceptance of ourselves, right? Within this community, right? And what we're critiquing or what we're building or communicating to each other only makes us better, rather than like, you need to become as, you know, general and white as possible in order to fit in the space. When it's like, no, like you could come with your full self, right? And that's what we're going to be kind of speaking to from, right? When it comes to the work or whatever, like, not that we're here critiquing people's work per se, but I think it's important to say that like the work itself still needs to grow. And even within my work, I feel like, okay, like I need to continue to get better when I think about editing, when I think about skin tone, when I think about composition, when I think, so it's like, there's never a time really, at least, where I'm looking at myself and thinking I'm the master and not the student. But I get outside of my own viewing of myself, there's also a different perception of who I am and the work I've been able to do over the years. And, you know, you kind of had to come to grasp with that and also make the right decisions along the way to do a thing like tonal or seeing Black, where it's not necessarily about me, right? It's about like the generational reference of what we can create for the future generations, which is the kids, right? Which is the youth. Like in this case, like, this is why I'm doing everything, whether it's my kids or somebody else's kids. Like, I want them to have a reference point to what can be possible when it comes to art, storytelling, but still being truth to yourself. So I think right now in this kind of like Black digital renaissance that's been sparked by unfortunate trauma and unfortunate murders, you know, the people have been doing the work before this happened, right? So it's not like, because this happened, now this work looks this way. It's like, no, like people have been telling these stories for years and years and years, even before I was born, right? But it just wasn't social media, it wasn't the connectivity, it wasn't the immediate access to pick up a camera, the immediate access to go to a museum and understand the art world, learn from YouTube University, like, you know what I mean? And just kind of take all those different things in. Like, that wasn't necessarily a thing before. So I think about what's happening now, and I think we have to realize that like not every opportunity is a good opportunity, right? Even though it's Black centric, even though it has, you know, your pointed perspective when it comes to what you create, what you love to create. Aesthetically, it could look amazing. It has the right budget, but you have to realize like if it doesn't have the intentionality of actually uprooting or supporting the narratives that help people understand the nuanced perspective of Blackness, like then it may be doing more danger than it may be doing good. And that's just the risks you run with accepting money for your art, right? And just trying to think through like, this is a great opportunity, but what does it mean? Because you also have the choice to say no, right? But I think I'm also speaking from a privileged perspective where you could say no and like your bills will still be paid. Like some artists really need to say yes to opportunities, and not everybody could just say no to them just because X, Y, Z, right? So I think there just needs to be a fair amount of balance. But now because of everything that's happened in this country, you know, there's so much opportunities being put out there, and I'm getting a lot of decks, you know, and a lot of briefs and signing a lot of NDAs about projects that I'm either, you know, passionate about, but then learn more about it or ask the right questions. And I'm like, you know what, this project's not for me. Thank you so much. But here's the reasons why I'm not accepting this project. And a lot of companies have been open to my feedback. And I'm like, this doesn't work for me because X, Y, Z. And they're like, thank you so much. We didn't think about it from that angle, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm like, I'm not just saying no for me. I'm trying to say no for what other artists like myself may say no for.
I need a completely different sort of conversational tone. Everything you said, I agree with. I need this conversation to go realer. This is not how we talk on the phone. So this is not how we talk on the phone. I need it to be as close to how we talk on the phone. Everything you said is beautiful. Joshua Kissi, Tonal CEO, Seeing Black CEO, this is not how we talk on the phone. I need it to be how like we talk on the phone.
I'm giving it to you.
This is the real sauce, but maybe it's me. I need to get to the place where we got to talk on the phone because these conversations go a little bit differently when we have the phone conversation. But really, what it boils down to, how I see it is just like there's some of the situations that you mentioned right there. Of course, Seeing Black is a situation where you guys created, which I think is novel and new, and it's almost like the birth of a like you said, a Black creative digital renaissance where people can see themselves in a space that they control and is Black owned, and is like elevating them to the same level of a Whitney, for instance. Elevating their work to that level, as well as having an economic charitable benefit to that. There hasn't been an apparatus like a Saatchi for Black art, or some sort of like an economic platform rather for like Black art, commerce, and having like just almost a consumer base for that, where people can exist, flourish, be lauded, be seen. And I thought that's why that was. I mean, everybody knows it's beautiful and novel, and great. But the secondary part about that is when you say about companies and entities and institutions coming up and saying, oh wow, there's some value here, how can we capitalize over that, which would be then the situations like random emails from companies saying they want to work with you to do something that is about this moment, but they have no real boots on the ground, or they want to do something for a campaign, but they don't want to really get down with you with that pain. They don't want to feel your pain, they don't want to know your pain, they don't want to see your pain, but they want to do a fucking campaign. How about you care enough to really know the ins and outs of what you're trying to do and why this image is going to have some sort of effect that you want to create, and not just be like, oh, well, we put, $200,000 in this campaign, and because we write the Google Trends zeitgeist, it gave us 800,000 impressions, 8 million impressions, 80 million impressions, and then we sold X amount of fucking sneakers or X amount of t-shirts and X amount of boots. You know what I mean? Like that's the calculation these people are talking about. That's the real versus the revenue. But I want to get to that real raw sauce in the conversation. Like, I think the sort of like, even just how we're coming about the conversation is really, really measured, very careful sort of way. I think it really undermines the actual anger and pain and emotionality of these things when they come through. Like the Whitney situation, sorry to talk about them, I'll say it because you didn't say it, if that's an issue. This shit was trash. It was garbage. It was whack. That's not how you approach anybody that you care about. If, hey, I see value in these artists, I'm going to buy them at 990% off versus the price that you have to go through if you went to a gallery, or the actual artists themselves try to come up and you're gonna do a whole opening exhibition for the next 6 months to have people coming through your doors that make you money, but you can't give an artist who would be in the 5 figures for their work.
Honestly,
that's a conversation I'm trying to have.
I know. It's hard because for me, I've never looked at myself or worked to be in a museum, right? Like, I've never started this to have museum work, right? And that's just never been something that's been my MO ever. Of course, now that's changing, and we're finding spaces that are actually safe in the right ways for you to explore those narratives. But like, for me, growing up in New York City, literally one of the most diverse and most, lucrative cities in the world, like I still never felt connected to museums, and that was a trend right away, right? So it just goes to show, like, even within our spaces of art, even in our spaces of creativity, like if we're going by their filter of what it means to have art, or what does art look like exactly, then like most times like where there's a disconnect there. So for me, I was always been like, yo, the people is the art, the stories are the artifacts, like these, like the galleries are outside, like this is very much that, right? So even in my own personal journey of photography, photographing more notable people or photographing campaign work and things like that, like I started only because I photographed other people that look like me within my community first, right? Like literally on the baseline of it. Like everything else when it comes to commercial campaigns and work and editorial stuff, it's amazing, but I'll never forget to like photograph the real everyday person in that perspective and how valuable it is, because there's no awards for just the everyday person that's doing everything that they need to do, rather than people who have this like glamorous life and this all of the things and the trinkets there that make their life look great, which is important and aspirational, but it should also be aspirational to just be a really good person every day and do the things you need to. So those are things I've not necessarily thought, well, for the most part, I never thought the art world looked at me as a special person in that way, right? So like the perspective now is just like, if I could combine a gallery and a movie theater and the people that go to each spaces, like what does that look like, right? Where you have the accessibility, but you have the understanding, but you also have the community aspect of it, of people just enjoying a film. Like people, like even especially now where we're not able to congregate the same way we used to, It's like people value in-person connections so much. So when it comes to the Whitney thing, like it was surprising, but it also wasn't surprising considering that, you know, we're always one of so many in those spaces anyway. So there's no way that, you know, these people would be able to contact us on the best light and be able to execute this in the best way. Like there's almost so much against them or so much challenges for them for that to happen. And it's not our fault. So it's just like, you know, you just got to make sure you do the work with things like that. But it was a sad situation. It was whack. It's whack as hell. But it goes to show, like, that was, like I said, it was an exhibit on its own. Like, here's how whiteness infiltrates Black art. Like, here, like, you could get the article, you got some things on Twitter, you could put all the things together to bring up your own theory, but it really shows that there's no real standard for, or at least a good practice on what, like, Black artists, how they interact and connect with museums and things like that. So I think I just never felt connected to those spaces, and I never tried. Like, I'm not gonna go somewhere I'm not wanted. So I just never tried to be like, yeah, I need to be a museum artist and have my art here and there. But I respect the artists that do. And if I get the opportunity and it feels right, I absolutely will. But it was never something I was thinking day to day, like, damn, I gotta be in a museum. Like, I want my things to go for thousands and thousands and everybody to floss on it and love it. I'm like, no, if my artwork changes the everyday person and within my community, that is the biggest gallery museum expression that I think feels like for me, right? Like there's never, like, that makes me happy, right? Like not a space where 10 people could come in and really look at the beauty of your art and just like, yeah, that's amazing. That could happen. But for me personally, the happiest moments is when I know a mother is like, my son loves this photo, or he sees himself in his photo. My daughter really connected to this. Like, those are the most happiest moments I have. And most times that's not happening in a museum. Like, it's just what it is, right? So
that's a fact. I mean, the fact that, one, you see the world that way, just, I mean, it's already, you know, we know this about you, but it's anyone who knows you, but that's indicative of your character and the reason why you've gone to this sort of place, that whole bridging of, like, not just, you know, the high and the low or the street and the fine, but just, you know, African American, and even in and of itself, like, as I always say, like, your true talent isn't like even your art. It's really like you're like, you almost have like this sort of like connection, like you're like the human internet, as I always say, like
you said the human social media. I'm like, man,
like, you really are like the human Rolodex in that sort of way. Like, you bring people together, you make them feel seen and heard. And, you and Tribe did that from the beginning with Street Etiquette.
Street Etiquette. Yes, that's this. Street Etiquette was about people. It wasn't about me and Tribe. It was about, the biggest editorials had to do with people for a reason. Like, if Black Ivy was just me and Trav, like, that would just be another like Street Etiquette post, right? If Sunflower is just me and Trav, it would just be another Street Etiquette post. I think the fact that it encompasses so many different people, for people to be like, that's me, or that's me, or I know somebody like that, it just opens up the connection box. And I think even though we didn't technically think like group photos means this, right? Like, we didn't think that far into it, but we just knew there was a connection there. When you feature more people, you know, there's more, you know, opportunity to just connect with more people. And it was just bigger than just us, right? So yeah, I think that was, when you say that, connecting the highs and lows, I think of Street Etiquette. That was the whole purpose. Like, aesthetically, it's like highs and lows. Like, you could thrift, but you could also get something designer. You could, you know what I mean? Like, so those polarizing worlds, those in-betweens, is something that I've been able to just continue to kind of like connect within my work, whether it was clothing all the way into photography itself. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that, but yeah.
No, for real. And it's been there for the past 10 years. But it's interesting that Street Etiquette, I mean, that's like at least, you know, like, it's 10 years right now, right?
Yeah, it's 10 years.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. And the fact that, you know, we're still in a space after Street Etiquette, after all these sorts of like big public demonstrations of like Black, you know, just like Black elegance, Black finery, Black value, Black, you know, just, you know, opulence or whatever. Like, everybody, like, I could distinctly in my mind remember how it happened. I was at college when, you know, Black Ivy came out, and like, I was like, and then come to find out we go to the same high school and all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Circus. And then, you know, it was that period in that moment when it was like, there used to be a time when you walked down the street and everybody was established, and that was a fact. There wasn't anyone that stood out. It was like, I see you with your hands and your dickies on. I got you. I know who you are.
Yeah.
And it was like that A$AP Rocky moment with A$AP Mob, where it became like the rapper basketball player thing, when everybody became visually like visual branding with attire. And then I feel like we got to the saturation point now, but even within all those things, from like the meaningfulness and the deepness and the richness and the dynamic change, changing quality of like Black Ivy to all the other, you know, larger editorials that you guys did, to the ASAP Rocky moments, to like the widespread saturation moments of fashion and art and et cetera, more people becoming image makers and so forth and so on. It's like we're still at a place where we're fighting for the value within the things that we create, fighting for the value in our talent, value in our imagery, value in our bodies, value in our communities. And it's just crazy because it's like all that education, it's almost like it's just going nowhere. And that's something that I kind of fight with sometimes. It's like, what's the point of all this education that people aren't learning? And I understand like people, quote unquote, people means nothing because there's always someone that you're not catching, someone that you're not missing, someone that you're missing. But it's just, you would think at a day and age right now that there still wouldn't be this sort of like otherness within Blackness. I feel like there's things that you and I, maybe based on our privilege and just even the backgrounds of the places that we're staying in, are gonna never go through because we're not George Floyd walking down, you know, in a certain neighborhood, although we're from those neighborhoods and go there, in a certain neighborhood ever have to deal with. And it's almost like, why can't we all just be seen, not saying as the same because we're all individuals, but like the same level of humanity? Why do I have to like position myself in a certain way and wear a suit or, you know, not have tattoos or whatever to be like seen as a respectable human being, a respectable Black person, or a useful, valuable Black person? You've been showing, like you said, the whole gamut of Blackness, from the streets to the art galleries to the museums, although the latter isn't important. And still, we still got to say, we're all human. We all have things.
I know, that's so crazy.
Maybe it's like the humanity still isn't seen. It's like people think, oh, you show me on a TV screen, you have a Black Panther, R.I.P. Chadwick. You know, these things are going to make us all in a whole be seen as more humane. There's going to like change, and maybe it's changing the younger generations that are not now. And I'm not saying like there's never going to be any police violence or brutality in the history of existence, but the fact of how these things are received, the momentary nature of the change, the fact that legislation can be put on the books, if this was happening to anybody else, it shouldn't be changed in an instance. We wouldn't be having no conversations. We'd be like, yo, remember that legislation that they put through? Yeah, that joint got passed quick as hell. Remember that dude that put the knee on the dude's neck?
Word.
Yeah, he already in jail. He got arrested that day. And, you know, like it's just there's still like this sort of like this like buffer period of like, hold on, wait. I thought this was over. I thought we had this resolved. No, it's literally we're like perpetually at the beginning line. And that's what frustrates me.
So real.
It's like every day. It's just like every year, every decade, every generation. It's just like we're reheating the same conversation. Black people matter. Everybody's lives matter. But Black people, because you've been shown that you're shooting us easily, we don't matter as much as you say they do, as everyone else does. So it's like we keep having this perpetual conversation of Black Lives Matter, whether it's Frederick Douglass, E.D. Du Bois. You can go into any decade of any history, any pamphlet, book, poetry from any Black person that was in existence, and it's just the same prevailing story. You know, but you got Doc Rivers crying, you know, why doesn't America love us? And I'm like, this man is in his 50s. And he's like crying as if he's a teenager, but it just goes to show like he hasn't seen any change in his life. Of course, if we're in a specific moment and everyone's like really like in their emotions for a number of different reasons, but he still hasn't seen the change. Post-Obama, post like just all these other seminal moments, post-Oscars and, you know, notoriety. It's like, it's still like not, it's still just not, it's like, it still hasn't sunk in. Maybe when you got the dude doing, you know, when you got this dude doing the this and this every day on television, but I don't know if it's the climate of America, the climate of the world. Are we just overly sensitive, or have things truly not gotten to the point where this is like genuine humanity is extended to everybody? And again, it doesn't even have all to do with, like the George Floyd, the Breonna Taylor's, fine, police brutality, one area of like Black devaluing. It's again, the situation with the Whitney. It's, you know, hey, this is an artist who's rep by a huge agency. Their work isn't $100. You can't just buy it and showcase it in your big ass whole $300 million endowment museum for $100. Like, it's like the thought of it is like there's something missing. So I'm sorry.
And for me, no, it's real. I mean, yeah, when I think about it, I'm like, it's crazy. The only feeling that I know that feels like the opposite, and this is going to be very privileged to say, is like when I'm in Ghana, when I'm in, you know, Jamaica, when I'm in spaces where there are mostly Black people. Not saying that anti-Blackness can't, you know, you can't see that within those societies, because those people, even within those countries, they were colonized by the British, and even like the structure of it, you know, the fact that we're speaking English, and it, like there is some type of oppressive thread somewhere, even within all Black countries, right? So it's not necessarily like dismantled all over, but I think, you know, there's just a little bit more hope in spaces like that. But as well as when you come here, you be able to appreciate the fight that people have been doing for so long, right? Like ever since Black people have come to this side of the country, or come to this country through the transatlantic slave trade, like, you know, there's always been a fight for that. And I feel like that's the main thing. Like you literally have free labor for 400 years on enslaved Africans, right? And you blitz the rest of the world, and like now you're at the top, you know. So you become jaded on how you got to the top and like what that top looks like, when those same people that you've used to get to the top of the top are saying like, hey, like you actually don't value us like as much as you think you do, even though you've written these laws, even though you've had people, the Voting Rights Act, and et cetera, like you still don't see us fully. And I think that was one of the main things with seeing Black, is like, you see us, like Black is the most hyper visible thing. Like I could walk down the street and people know like I saw a Black man walk down the street. Like you're on the subway, you're holding, like you're just so visible wherever you go, but like people still don't see you fully. And that was the thing, like why don't you try to see in Black, right? Like from our perspective, rather than how you see us so hyper visible, but there is no meaning to that visibility in your head, right? There's not a full gamma of like the life I could have just because you see me, right? Just because I'm so hyper visible. So I think even like looking from the outside in, like people think the US, like people in Ghana, just like people that just see the US, they think America is like 50% Black, right? Because it's like on TV, on sports and media and acting and films and like, it's just like, wow, like there's no way you could dim our shyness when it comes to like how we occupy space. But you realize like, yo, we're only 12 and 13% of the population. Like, you know what I mean? When you realize those numbers and you comparatively make it make sense to like the police murders, the incarceration rate, the poverty numbers, it's like, why is 12 and 13% of the whole population being oppressed, you know what I mean? Or have these like anti-Black narratives within their schooling, within their lives? Like, it's just like, there's something obviously wrong, right? And for me, like the biggest form of capitalism started when you're able to get enslaved Africans to come to America. Like then there's like everything attached to Blackness, everything attached to perceived property that you thought you owned people will always be a fight. Like it will always be a fight. Like the blood money itself and what this country has been able to be built upon is built upon people's slaves. Like it's built upon people, like enslaved people from one space to another. And I'm just like, come on, like you can't think just because, you know, we elected President Obama, like all those things would just disappear, right? And that's like the gaze they kind of had people under when he first got elected. Like, if we elect this, you know, African-American man, like everything else just kind of, you know, and it's like, no. They even got more mad that we elected a Black president. So now this is how people go ham with the Trumpisms, you know what I mean? Like,
it's interesting that you say that, because I've been, you know, doing my part to educate myself about what, I mean, other people, I won't just call them white folks, but just other people have been thinking, you know, like what is their like stance on it? And these are the things that I get in retrospective. One, it's the asking of like, you know, from whatever perspective, let's assume that this person's a white person, or maybe a non-Black empathizer. You don't empathize with a Black flag. What do y'all want specifically? Number one, that's what they want to know. Secondarily, you know, how to go about doing that. You got to have a plan. You got to have a whole game plan list for some shit that we didn't create.
Yeah.
You got to fix it. You build it. You guys are the people who are getting abused by the system, or quote unquote, there is no systemic racism. But tell me how you want me to fix it. Okay, and what exactly you want. And secondarily, it's like, this was our ancestors, bro. Everybody's ancestors is an asshole, which is true to a very large degree, to be honest. Why can't we just live in the present and make the future better? Why can't we just live for the now and make the future better? I'm like, yeah, bro, that's cute. I'm gonna tell you why. And I understand that, you know, white folks, again, you know, beat up by the police too, but again, it goes back to that 13%. It's like the numbers is like 3, 4, 5, 6 times, you know what I mean? So like, it is what it is. Like people talking about, oh, he shot him 7 times in the back. I mean, what are you trying to kill? A dinosaur, bro? Like you trying to kill, like you trying to knock down an elephant? And I mean, like this is like the level of like force. Like they must think we're bulletproof. Like this the melanin is literally like meteor skin. Like it's just like, we got to make sure we put this down. We can't subdue, we can't grapple. It's like, we must be so terrifying. But I know I'm off on a tangent. But the point is, they want to know what we want. They want to know how we want to get it done exactly, specifically, so they can help if they want to help. And then third, they feel like their ancestors did it. Why can't we just move forward and move to the present? And like me, I can keep going on for a very long time. And you know, why can't we just have personal agency and realize that the situation is trash right now? But there's been many other Black people that have come up and risen up in the same system that people are complaining about. So why can't you also get ahead? And to me, it's like, yeah, bro.
No, they do that
I'm
a
ahead.
lot.
You're ahead.
No,
but the point is,
do that a lot.
Don't get that opportunity to get ahead.
That type of anti-Black like trope, like even hits our communities, right? The West Indian community, the African community, the migrant community that come here and be like, oh, like African Americans aren't working that hard. Like, we're coming here, we're getting these opportunities. This is like, you don't realize you only have these opportunities because of African Americans generationally, right? Like, putting in that work for you to even come here, right? To be an immigrant, to be first generation, whatever, and reap all the opportunities. Like, so when they have that kind of divisive mind of like, you know, let's pit them against each other. Let's choose the person, you know, from Kenya to go to Harvard or wherever, you know, instead of like the people that have been kind of really fighting this fight for a long time, and like everything is stacked up against you, right? For you to even travel, like at least for my parents' case and a lot of West Africans, for you to even travel from one space from in West Africa, one country here to here, shows the amount of privilege you have, because you need an education. You definitely need to like have money in your account. Unless you do lottery, that's the only way, or refugee status. Like, so a lot of the people who are Nigerian and Ghanaian and become doctors and lawyers and all this stuff, like they've already come from a privileged place back home. Like their family already they're doing okay back home, right? Not saying everybody's a millionaire back home, but like they're doing pretty okay to come, go to school here for college, graduate, you know, bring their wife over, kids, or start a family. So I'm like, even with the nuance of like blackness, right? Like I'm very, very, very particular, want to highlight, you know, that difference, but as well as the similarity in blackness, especially represented diaspora. Like my story will never be the generational African-American story that's through and through from here, 5 generations in. So like, even when I'm speaking about these topics, I'm very conscious of like, am I taking up space? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to take up space when I know there are people that should be voicing their opinion from a certain perspective. Like, I want to be a translator. I want to be able to somebody that could be think as a Pan-Africanist, where it's like, I want to bring my Africanness, but also bring my Americanness to the space and like have more definition there, but also being very, very particular about like not taking up spaces that other people are supposed to be in who are Black, but also the understanding and the dynamics. There's just so much at play there. So I'm like, I'm learning as much as possible, as much because like, I remember somebody asked me, they're like, yo, like, how do you feel being first generation African, but having such a large definition of what it means to be Black in America, like creatively? And I was like, oh shit, like, I never really thought about that. Like, yeah, like, you're right. Like, you know, I was like, from the beginning of SHEREN, I think there's me and Travis being West African, West Indian was always the kind of boiling plate that we kind of went with, whether it was the beads or this or that. Like, we've always kind of inserted some sort of island or Africanness, you know, culture within our dress and within our expression. And like, amazingly, African-American people who aren't probably directly connected to a Trinidad or to a Nigeria were able to identify with the things that make them African, or the things that make us Black collectively, right? So it's such a beautiful thing to realize, like, you have that access, you've had that blessing to create stories that are innately African, but innately Black at that, right? Like, how do you make sure there's this common red thread between all spaces, whether I'm in the Caribbean, whether I've been on the continent, or whether I'm here in the States? Like, how do I make work that connects to all these different people? And that's just been my goal from the beginning. It started out in outfits, it started out in clothing, which is cool, but now it's that clothing was only like a form of storytelling. So now in a space where it's like, there's a tonal, there's a C in Black. Now there's institutional answers to what that could look like, and it should inspire others to do the same. So like, I never really questioned when it's like, yo, you're just creating Black and brown work. Like, that's it. Like that, before it felt a little controversial when I remember this lady asked me, like, do you photograph white people? And I was like, yeah, if they're part of the story of the narrative of other people, like, not just like, hey, here it is, here's like, what is the story saying? Like, why are you selecting these models? What is the clothing saying? What is the messaging behind it? And before, you kind of feel guilty to be like, damn, like, I need to sell out, quote unquote, right? I need to get more commercial, make my work appeal more to wider demographics, aka white people, whiteness, or like the way that people prescribe to that. Like, I need to do that in order to make it. And it's like, now we're showing that like, you can create the work that you feel like best represents you and still make it, and still like have the Tyler Perry effect, whether you love his movies, your films, or whatever, right? Like,
the man's a winner.
Yeah, the man knows his demographic, he knows his people, and he's creating work for his people. Like, this is for us, by us, with us. Here you go. And I think for a long time, we always felt like when we explore areas like that, we have to do it for everybody, right? Like, hey, this is a room for everybody. And I was like, that's dope, but sometimes our own individual kind of narratives and agendas and issues, like, we don't get to really discover those things or really heal from those moments, because we're inviting everybody to the party. You know what I mean? So it's like, no, let's get on the same page collectively, because even within the Black community and diaspora, we have our differences and we have our tension plates. Like, how do we get on the place collectively? Then we could go outside and invite everybody else in. Like, yeah, you could come chill.
And that goes to like a really, really strong point about like ownership and like the need for, you know, just seriously like Black ownership of the things that we're seeking. I feel like a lot of the awards and accolades and things and, you know, just like stuff that people in general, whether in creativity, outside of creativity, aspire to, or there's a lot of like white validation tied up into that. Like, I got to get a Vogue cover because I can't just make my own, I can't just make my own book and put my own.
You can't just have SHEREN out here.
Have my own face on it and shoot my own photos. Now, like, I can't just do that and make it harder.
Cleon Gray is the Tyler Perry. He's got,
you know what I mean? Like, I'm a designer myself, writing myself, taking the vast majority of the photos, you know what I mean, with me and my fam, and that's it. Like, it's not even about like an exclusion of whiteness. It's just like a celebration of Blackness. And I think sometimes the white folks that I know who are like, you know, just dope people, they don't have any problem with that. Just like when I go watch a, you know, predominantly white casted movie, I don't go in there and be like, damn, son, man, I wish I had seen the whole cast was Black. No, it's just like you're watching someone's life and existence, and if you appreciate that person, you see them as a human, that their existence can be your existence. I think Arthur Jaffa said something beautiful years ago, a quote that I like, you know, I really loved and I wrote down. And he was like, you know, why can't I be Black and universal? You know, and it goes to that, like, why do you assume that because you've seen, you know, a predominant Black cast or just Black people being presented, that white people can't, you know, that white people are, one, intentionally excluded, and two, their exclusion means something bigger than just they weren't fit for the story. Just like I wouldn't go out and try to create a message for a homosexual Black man without, you know, like knowing that person's story, that journey. Like sometimes people gotta ask, is this a story that I should be telling? Is this a story that I have the most information or sensitivity to tell? And if I do tell, I better make sure that I do my part to at least not to be like a Black straight person writing a Black homosexual story that I'm a caster with a Black straight man as well. Like, it don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, sometimes I feel like you got to realize the ways in which certain stories just don't appeal to you, certain things aren't for you, but that doesn't mean that you can't engage with them. And I know that's not exactly what you were saying, but just in relation to that question, white lady, like, do you treat white people if they're part of the story? You know, and there's just been like every story for the, like, it's people have been trying to make it seem like every story from the beginning of time has been white, but there hasn't been. It's been within the past, you know, a couple hundred years where white people, which quite frankly, from, you know, any history books you can go back into, that they've gotten their chance to kind of lead the world. You know, this is their moment. Maybe industrial and industries more of their moment. Technology for the time being is their moment. You know, when you talk about the earth and the nature and, you know, more things of the land, maybe that was a moment that was for a different sorts of person, Black people, brown people.
But you know, and it's interesting you bring this up, because I think that ownership of narrative and that ownership of spaces is so important. Like, just generationally, right? Like, being a Black or African person, like, the way we tell stories isn't necessarily to own them, right? It's never been about me owning your narrative. I own your story. Like, even orally, right? Like, the Western society is very much about, like, I'm going to sit by my desk and scribe what has happened and what I saw, right? Like, it's very much that, but like, within even like the oral culture of African culture and how we communicate, it's always been from person to person, right? So as soon as you cut that, the only dangers of that is like, as soon as that person passes away, that information is now lost, right? But it's supposed to be community where there's always somebody that's passing along the information that needs to go to the next generation. And that's really important, right? In the way that we do it, where it's like, I'm not writing it down because I don't own it. I'm just passing it on to you to pass it on to the next generation, right? But this sitting down and writing down and scribing down and be like, this is what I saw. This is like, is a very Western way of like documenting and storytelling. And like, a lot of our innate storytelling was ceremonial, is how we move, how we grew, how we take in music. Like, there's so much in how we celebrate life moments that aren't exactly just like, in 1694, this is what happened, but it's like, you felt it because you were there and you were present. So I feel like so much of Blackness is just being present, like just being in the moment, even though there may be chaos, there may be joy, maybe like you're present in it. And like, that alone is like a reference point to itself, right? Because with that happiness, with that joy, there's just moments that happen that just historical, that just because of the way we move, right? So it's just like always interesting to think around, like, even like Greek mythology and things like how they storytell compared to like how African culture, African people, Black people in general storytell is very different. We could assimilate, like, both things kind of need to exist, especially because we live in Western society, but sometimes there's like not that much value placed on what Black people or African people do like innately well. and it's all about assimilation, all about like, you know, trying to take out as much as that primitive, like, aka like that type of worded mindset just to be accepted in this space. And it's like, nah. For me, it's like now I need to unlearn a lot of those things and learn more of like what is innately me that doesn't necessarily need to be monetized, doesn't necessarily need to be capitalized on, but just spread from person to person, right? Just spread from another artist or another storyteller or just another person to person. I think that's the value that I'm trying to find now. And that only happens in community. That doesn't happen in isolation. Like there's no village if there's just one person. It's just one person. Like, so it's just like that information is super important, especially in today's age, because there's so much out there, right? So how do you not levitate, how do you aggregate what like information is important to you, what information is not important to you? It's just a lot.
You said so many things I want to tackle, and it's like,
no, my bad. I'm just
no, I'm good way. Like, I got like 3 things I want to say, and I'm not even sure which one to start with.
Whatever.
So you said like you just dropped some things I want to talk about. I gotta like probably try to separate in my brain, which I'm not good at. I gotta say everything at once. But I think what you said about, you know, the way that we speak and translate things as Black folks, African Americans, you know, a part of the diaspora, is like there's a energetic, spiritual, like cut through that we get a chance to do. That's the reason why like, culture is created by Black folks on average, unless you're talking about, you know, mayonnaise sandwiches and, you know, like hillbillies, like we do this shit. Like, so, and I think that it's because we still operate and we have like a very closeness to like, you know, nature, you know, the vibrational elements of life. And it's not something that we shy away from. We're not trying to like turn life into statistics. We're not trying to like Instagram our way through it and hit everything with an AI and an algorithm. Damn, that's still on. Adrian, that's still on. That's still on. So like, but so yeah, we're not trying to algorithm our way through or like have chimes coming in every 5 seconds to like, you know, distract us from the things that we're trying to create, which goes to a crazy point of like, why is that then being devalued? Because we are the culture and the people who are trying to create those humanist things. Like even in this moment of being quote unquote locked down or like at least socially distanced, it's like the reason why that feels so difficult is because as human beings that we're social creatures and we are the ones that create the social. We create the culture, we create the music. Of course, it's country music and other things like that. But really, like for the youth, like where the world is, it's those are the things that have currency that cut through all the BS that makes this sort of like connected thing. It's almost like, now I was gonna say, it's almost like in a way, and I'll just say this last thing. I find it to be an incredibly powerful thing and unique thing about like Black folks to where there could be an injustice in Minnesota, wherever, Wisconsin, and like across the world, there's like a vibrational like message that's where it's like people activate, and not just Black folks. This is my point. It's like an activation of like humanity, of like just cause, like righteous action across the world. When one person hurts, it's like it comes through, and I think those are the things. While social media it's on a deeper level.
It's crazy, and I was gonna bring up this point. It's literally perfect you said that, because like I was speaking to somebody that works at Twitter. I won't mention him, just out of like I don't want him to get tight or anything if I put this out there, but he's a good dude, good moments that I've had with him. He's in Ghana, turning up, all that good stuff. But he works at Twitter, and right now, as it stands, the current highest tweeted tweet is Chadwick Boseman's tweet, and it just goes to show like he was like, some people at the company were like, "This is great," you know, like how like for him it was so hard to celebrate Black death in that way, right? Even though like Chadwick is looked at in a way that's in so many dynamics of heroism, of somebody that was humble, somebody that was, you know, very much before his time, somebody that worked hard even though they had disabilities and didn't want the world to know that, because the world would probably not even be ready for that, right? For him to state what he was going through and still take on the roles that he did, he probably understood that like the world is not ready for that, right? So there's some learning lessons for general society in general when we think about ableism and what we're able to persevere against, right? Like the fact that people are glorifying that he had cancer and did this is like, it could be problematic, right? But my main point was that like there was this feeling for my friend that worked at Twitter that like this is the highest tweeted tweet ever in the existence of the platform, and it's revolved around somebody dying, right? Like somebody that's fought so much for Black people dying, right? So there's so many different ways you could look at that, right? When it comes to what we celebrate, why we amplify it. Of course, everybody felt so connected to him and his story and the way it rolled out. And I'm still not over. I'm still processing a lot of that, watching his talks, kind of understanding more of his mindset and why he did it for. But man, like just an amazing person. Definitely rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. And just like, I'm inspired to create more work because of what he was inspired to do with the roles he took on. And I think I saw that one interview when he was just like, yeah, like it may not be the right opportunity to work with this director or this actor. So just be careful about all the work you say yes to and where it places you and things like that. But he was just really on the next level when it came to his story and his like responsibility for the community, right? Like, yes, he was the Marvel Black Panther for everybody, for the whole world, but the Black community definitely took a whole different connection to it because we don't have those superheroes, right? So there's a lot there that I'm really, really inspired by, even with his unfortunate death. I'm just like, man, so much to take from this moment, like so much to take from this year alone.
Yeah, man.
But
It's like for him specifically, he was like, you know, it's like he was pure, like he was clear, like he knew why he was here, he knew his intention, and you only see a sort of like radiance from people who were like living lockstep in their truth, who were like literally got the boots that they're meant to have on in life on, and they're working to push humanity forward, or at least, you know, those that resonate with this sort of like vibration forward. And like you said, I don't think anybody who's really like a loving, thinking person who's really over his death. So I can understand the sort of like mixed feelings with his tweet, because it's like, you know, surrounding Black Death. But, you know, the things that he wrote in there were still impactful. And I know it meant a lot to people. And it was more like, I see that as an acknowledgement, but I understand anyone who has their differences of opinion with that, that's a different story. There's a whole nother conversation about like the passability, acceptability, the sort of like commercialization of Black death and like Black trauma. That's like a whole another conversation that literally has metrics and KPIs. You can have Black people. I was even listening to something really shortly that so actually a white dude having a conversation about like marketing, talking about, I think somebody shared on their Instagram page or IG story, whatever it was, and it was about like, you know, how like it was a situation about like rap, and you know how rap, Black people shoot each other, blah blah blah, bang bang bang, dead, no problem, that's good. That could be in the news, that could be promoted, that could be in a commercial, that could be whatever. Like no one cares about that. You know, you're in a meeting with somebody, anybody cares about that? No. You know, you have some white kids, they talk about going around shoot, shoot, shoot. Whoa, what's that song about? Stop the presses. We can't talk about white people going out and hearing and shooting each other and doing that type of stuff. That's not what we're here to sign up for. We haven't been normalized to hear about like white on white death or white death like that. That's not cool. Even the situation the guy used was, wish I remembered his name, whatever. But he made a great point about like Rick Ross when he talked about like date rape. Whoa, you can't talk about date rape, but you can absolutely talk about the sentence before about shooting a Black dude, cold blood, murder him. It's just interesting about like how we're geared, even as Black folks, how we're geared to like, it's the normalization of like Black death is just like, cool, like it's marketable. Put that in your iPhone commercial, Apple, get on it. But it's like when you just go over these like sort of like, you know, guardrails of like what's considered decent or what considered as societal or civil, it just seems like all within that Black death ain't. So when you say like the whole point of like this being the most liked thing, I can understand the need to be like, I don't know how I feel about that, because that's another situation of like Black death is being used for some weird sort of likability algorithm type thing. I'm sure Twitter don't get paid by that, but it's so weird. But just on the secondary point, which I hopefully haven't lost, you know, in my mind as I was thinking about what you were saying about Chadwick and what he was doing with regard to his, you know, with regard to his purpose and his light. It's just something, you know, there's like a meme like the Black kids like dancing on the table. Like,
right?
And it's like because they got tickets to go see Black Panther.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about his death, you know, Kobe, you know, even, you know, John Thompson, like, you know, Nipsey, of course, you know, like it goes on. And whoever I'm forgetting, I apologize. And of course, there's Black women there who passed away who are meaningful as well. But just as a Black man, it's like, I even wrote about it recently, just about like, I feel like we're at a point where we're just losing the people who are like at the beginning of that line, pulling that rope for us, pulling the future into existence, pulling our dreams, our aspirations, our strength. It's like these people are like the torchbearers for our like, are like not even just the kids looking up to them who are like in awe of their brilliance and their like bodies and their humanity and their minds, but it's just like these people are the ones pulling hardest on the rope. They're the ones leading us to pull harder in the back. And it's just like, how many people do you have to lose? How many hands, bodies, brothers, sons, mothers, sisters, daughters? I mean, like, you're gonna lose before you can't even pull the rope with the same level of strength, or you can't, or whatever sort of future you were pulling. It's like it's shifted and it's in a different direction now. And now we're heading down a different sort of path because the direction and the steps that we were going in are headed in a new direction now because we don't have that collective guidance. It's like these things matter. Like these people matter, and it's not just these like great folks. And at the top of like society who are, you know, wealthy and looked up to, but even just the bodies on the ground. It's the regular people that you show in the mundanity of life. But I think it just hits people a little bit different because it's like these people are not even just one people. They're like millions of people wrapped in one body. And that's the reason why, like, a Chadwick, like this dude. And again, like Black Panther was a Marvel movie about a superhero, but what the movie meant to let people understand, he was a Black global superhero. He was the other than Blade, but even just beyond that, it was a mainstream figure, billion-dollar movie of a Black, noble, regal man being shown in like his ability to be a king, his ability to be strong, his ability to be kind, wise, empathetic, technologically forward-thinking, you know, and like it was just like he was what the movie intended to be as a story that was fictitious is what he was as an individual. So it's like on two sides. You lose the representation of this actor and you lose the man who was the person who could make that representation true. You know, when people talk about like he really was our king, in that sense, I really believe for some people he was that. And particularly for children, he was their first. Imagine like watching Malcolm X and that movie changing you and Denzel Washington dying a year later. Like people don't understand, like it's not normal. And it's like the same way like Kobe Bryant's supposed to be alive. You know what I mean? Like he had a voice. He said things. Nipsey had a voice. He said things. He did things. He's talking about cryptocurrency and stems and creating STEM situations in the community with other people. And people feel, oh, of course you can have someone else create another STEM school. Of course you can have someone talk about gang violence and get it down. Everybody don't have the same voice. Some people speak to larger groups of people. I can say one thing and maybe 10 people like it. Another person can say maybe 1 million people like it. It's about how many people you can get to go. And when you lose those go-getters, those inspirational figures, you can't replicate them. They ain't no more Tupacs. No matter if I'm wearing a bandana and I got a nose ring. You know what I mean? It's like it's just like you can't replicate somebody's energy, no matter how many people that person motivates, just to lose them is like a loss of humanity. And then I'm always like, so who's going to replace that person? If they even replace, is it going to be a good person? Is that person going to be benevolent? Or is it going to be somebody that's worse? We went from Obama to Trump. It don't got to get better. Life doesn't have to get better. Regardless of how you think about them and whatever, it don't matter. Like things don't have to get better, whether you perceive them to be better or not. Maybe Trump for some people is like the best thing ever. I'm like, great, good for you. I think I find him funny sometimes, but no one can say he doesn't create a certain level of divisiveness that's not good for nobody, whether you care about your taxes or not. Like that dude don't look like anything that I think is together, moving forward, great. Not for the vast majority of Americans, maybe for like some Americans who like tiki torches and like to bring guns to courthouse, maybe he's what they look
crazy.
Like. Or like if you care about your stock market portfolio more than what you care about, like, you know, the good feeling of bodies and humanity and your stance in the world as a world power. But you know, like, I'm just at a point right now where it's almost like in life, I just would hope that we're still headed to the same futures that we imagined before. I don't want people to get more isolated because of the situation with this pandemic. I don't want people to feel like they can't trust people. I don't want people not to be hugging. I don't want people to feel like their dreams aren't going to come true. Sometimes I think it's like if I was an 18-year-old, 14-year-old, a 10-year-old kid, even somebody who just graduated college, even myself right now. First of all, you don't know what the hell is going on. But beyond that, for the young people, what do you tell them to hope for? I can't go to school. I can't see my friends. There's barely any jobs. This economic recession really hasn't hit the way it's going to hit. You know, and all the while you have this existential crisis of a disease. They're talking about aliens. I'm joking, but you know, but it's just like sometimes it's like, are we losing our hope? And who are the people that give us hope? The people that we think are better than us, the people that we look to for strength, although they have people that they look to for strength too. So it's just a circle. It's like when you lose those people, it's like, damn, if that dude can't make it, how am I gonna make it?
Wow.
And that's the thing that that makes me the most sad when I think about the situations and people that we lose. Of course, their families feel it, but just sometimes you need that person to be that guiding light, even if they don't realize that they are, because they help all of us see in the dark.
That's so real.
Sorry, I went on a huge tangent.
No, that's real. No, I was like, yeah, take it there. No, it's so real.
I just want people to be hopeful and feel like they're safe and feel like they're seen and feel like they're heard and feel like they have value. And that's something I've struggled with in the past, just feeling like, damn, does anybody like really truly give a fuck about me in this moment, about me in this life? And you try to like fill in those gaps with like things that you do that are great, rather than you just being a great person. Feeling like you have, you like, oh, I think I'm not shit, so I gotta like make something that is the shit. And if I make something that is the shit, then people will think I'm the shit, and then I have value, rather than like, No, I have value in and of myself, breathing right now, the way I see the world, how I treat people. That's the number one highest grade resource in life. It ain't gold, it ain't money, it ain't data.
It's true.
It's literally you, your
It's as
body.
simple as what I think I saw. Forgot what you worship either restores you or destroys you. It's just like, yo, it's like if you're very much into what people are gonna say about the things you're creating, or you know, the ego part of it, like you're gonna always be, you know, in limbo on what that opinion looks like, right? But if you're going based off of what the people that love you and appreciate you and know all the parts of you are saying about your work or saying about how you show up for them and things like that, like those are the important parts to lean into. But if you lean into like some of this, like just, you know, fly by night, just like things, like you're gonna always be in limbo. So that's real though. I think a lot of people create from insecurity. I think ego and all of these things are part of art. All these things are part of humanity, which is beautiful in general, right? When it comes to the beauty of struggle, the beauty of living, the beauty of joy, the beauty of sorrow, and like then creating something around that, which is important, to be a part of you, but it shouldn't be all of you, right? So I think I remember somebody said that there's no way to create in jealousy or create in envy or whatever the case is. I just saw a quote that somebody thought, I was just like, that's really dope. Like you could create and it could be something successful, but it's how you sit with the work, right? This it's a spiritual thing. Like that you still have to live with that work, that connection, why you created it, and things like that. So I'm pretty sure Rick Ross, when he hears that bar that he said about date rape, it hits way differently than it did when he was in the studio, you know, now, like years and years later. But yeah, man, it's a gift to create, and especially a gift to create off of moments that aren't always, you know, happy-go-lucky moments. Still be able to live with that, and I feel like that's always the artist's challenge. Whether you're talking about Jimi Hendrix or you're talking about like people just going too far within the space of, you know, the art being spiritual, the art being so much a part of who you are, but also going, you know, to substance abuse and things like that, which is a whole other different conversation. But, you know, I think of some of the greats before the Kobe's and the Nipseys, but like the Jimi Hendrix, the Basquiat's, you know, the people that had influence, but have, not saying that, you know, Kobe and Nipsey, you know, the way they went out was, rest in peace to them, was definitely not the same as, you know, drug abuse and things like that. But we lose these heroes, you know, after they've come and informed us on the blueprint of how we move forward, the blueprint of like inspiration, like how many art pieces you've seen that look like Basquiat, you know what I mean, that has that influence. And he's not here, you know, he passed away like 26, 27 at that, you know, at your peak, right? So it just goes to think how interesting it is to lose Black heroes. But it actually, that question, like, do we always have to hero and fantasize like our figures, and can't they just be everyday amazing people as well? So yeah, there's something there. Because as soon as they become a hero, they lose not a little bit, they lose a lot of the humanity that you would grant towards them.
You do put them up on a different type of pedestal.
Yeah, so you don't see them the same as the next person that you see on the street because of the things they've done, right? So I think for a lot of notable and celebrity people, they just want to be treated like anybody else. That's like the biggest gift, right? Rather than, hey, like let me fawn all over you and things like that. But yeah, it's there's so much there. The heroism thing, and sometimes that definitely it doesn't rub me the wrong way, but it just makes me think like, do we always need to be like striving and things like that just to be celebrated, and not just for the everyday? So, you know, I think there's a balance there, because those people are very much inspired by their everyday. Like those people that we consider heroes, they're inspired by their mothers or brothers or whoever else around them to make them to be that type of artist or person. So it's a cycle for sure. I think you mentioned it earlier. So it's very much a cycle.
Yeah, I think it all wraps around eventually. And because we are normal people, there's always going to be someone who's going to be pushed to the forefront because of their talent, or because somebody wants to see them in a, you know, with a bigger microphone in a sense. So, you know, it's always going to come around. But I guess we can switch to some, you know, more fun, uplifting things. You know, tell me about some work, man. Tell me about some of the recent things that you've done. I know you did.
Yeah,
recently, you were telling me about how beautiful of a soul and person he is. He like really makes me happy about the future.
Oh, Jaden Smith, he's amazing.
He really makes me happy about the future. The kid is super talented. He seems like an overall good person.
Yeah, I was saying, like, as soon as I got off set, I was like, man, if I was his parents, I'd be so proud to to raise a son like that. That was just really hospitable, just like great manners, just really there to create great work, right? Like even though he could have said no, he could have like done whatever, but I think for the most part, for him to show up and be like, we're gonna get a great shoot done. I'm hyped for this. Let's get it done. Like that gave me all the affirmation I needed to know to be like, here's how we go. So I think thinking around his image, right, but also his family and like you kind of like Black royalty at this point. You know what I mean? Yeah, like to us as for the community, right? Like you've existed in a space and place that a lot of us don't get to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's this superior dynamic between you and other people. And I think that's what I saw on set, right? Like treating everybody the same way you want to be treated. So when I thought about the concept of like Black joy and like how he represents a lot of Black joy when it comes to how he's able to be himself in so many ways, whether it's not prescribing to like toxic masculinity or things like just being yourself, being open to like what other people are saying to you, but also knowing who you are is really, really important. So I feel like I saw that within what he's been able to share with us, right? Because I don't know him personally. Like we spent time on set, and that's great. So I could only speak to the things that I saw on set and what I've seen from his work. But it's always been about just like inspiring the next generation, galvanizing the youth. And I was just like, man, I want to really play within that. So that whole editorial is very much like,
here's man. Walk us through.
Yeah, no, I mean,
how it starts with like like you said, the Black he was a representation of joy. Like I want to know how you work. I'm trying to get there. But a lot of us trying to get there. So bring it down from the beginning.
Once I heard that, no, absolutely, I appreciate that. Once I heard that once I heard that he could be a possible collaborator within this editorial, I was like, oh, dope. I immediately went to the drawing board, right? Like he's somebody that was on the list, right? Like everybody has a list of people that they would love to photograph. And for me, I was like, I want to be able to humanize his experience, his work, his art, his personality, all through photographs. Like that was my main goal. So when Corey Stokes from Highsnobiety, hit me up, I was just like, okay, like let's do something. I'm down. And I was in LA at the time, but dates didn't match up, so I had to come back home. Then I went back to LA for other work, and that kind of all matched up perfectly. But when I thought about him, I just thought about color. I thought about saturation. I thought about joy. I thought about having safe spaces. Even so, it's like obviously the whole editorial takes place outside, outdoors, in the wild, right? But it's kind of like this peaceful tranquility within the wild when you have a couch or you have, fabrics flowing or you're on a surfboard on top of a mountain. It's just like, if you could turn your dreams into reality, that's what it would look like, right? So it's like, but not the dreams that you continually think of and now you're living, but the things that are like so vast and so like aspirational, but you don't get to necessarily live them, quote unquote. So I try to really show that, where it's just like your dreams are valid, like your dreams are valid, right? Like how you occupy space is valid. And I really wanted to show that through him, his work, his personality, the way he just takes up space was so beautiful. He didn't say no. He wasn't not down with any idea. Like he just, everything I said, he was just for. Like he trusted my vision as a fellow Black creator to, convey the message. And I appreciate that, because you don't get that on every set, especially if people of, notable caliber and things like that. But I was just like, thank you so much, because you're down with this. And it was 95 degrees and the man was wearing a suit, like a hot ass suit. So it's just like there's so many things that could have got him to just be ticked off. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm good. Like you're jumping on a trampoline with a suit in 95-degree weather, in an area that has like wildfires, and like it's hot. And like, I didn't see the man complain once. I didn't see the man, like, I even had to tell him, like, can you get him some water? Like, cause like my man was just like in a whole different Jedi mindset. And it was just really valuable to see, like, his threshold is like in another space probably. Like, and that's just my interpretation of it. I'm just like, yo, if this didn't bother him, jumping on a trampoline in a hot ass suit in hot ass weather, up and down, if I'm like, oh, let's do the sixth take, the eighth take, and bringing that same amount of enthusiasm is like, damn, like I appreciate that, because that means like you're here to create the greatest art possible in this moment. And a lot of people aren't in the moment, so they're thinking in the back or the past, or they're thinking ahead, right? But in the moment, he was just like, this is what I'm doing. I've committed myself to this, and this is where I'm at. And I just found that really beautiful. And honestly, it's one of my favorite shoots I've been able to do.
Yo, absolutely.
Probably.
I gotta cut in.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things you've ever done, bro. Like,
appreciate it, bro.
As I told you, as I told you before, like you put in the
thank you, bro.
Gold back in our tone. Like I love the new like treatment that you're doing to the
thank you, brother.
The processing is phenomenal. The saturation, like just the composition of the images for the couch. Like
yeah, the couch. Yeah,
it was just striking.
I had another idea that they scrapped, but it's so dope. Like I had this idea of like stacking up a whole bunch of mattresses and having him like stand on top, and it was supposed like, but they're just like, oh, we're not gonna have enough time. But like, I really wanted to delve in deep into like Jaden's story and be able to amplify it. And I just wanted people to see the photos and be like, I haven't seen Jaden like this before. Like, I just wanted people to get that. And he's vulnerable, he's creative, he's artistic, he's explorative. I really wanted to show like, this is the other side of him, like through this Black lens, right? Like from Black creator to Black creator, like what space can we create that make other people be like, oh, that's an amazing place to create from. I would like to do that as well. So man, it was one of my favorite shoots I ever photographed so far, period. Like,
it's interesting.
And like each set took like 5 minutes or so. Everybody's like, you done? I'm like, yeah. Like I just knew, I was just so like, I was in my hotel room going over the shot list like, okay. Like I location scouted, I looked at every angle and composition. I knew where the sun was going to be at. I knew where the lights were needed to be in comparison to the sun. So yeah, I was just like, there's no way. I was like, yo, this, and also shout out to the, not to my assistants, but to the assistants on set, Clark and Steven, they were amazing. They provided such amazing assistance and help when it comes to the photographic creative treatment. But when I was there, like I went to location scout the day prior. On a day of, I came 2 hours early just to walk this space, and envision what I think should happen, right? Like that's really important to be like, when I come here, this is gonna go like this and go like that. Like enough room for planning, but also enough room for creativity. So I used to just be like, okay, let me walk through each set. Let me look at it. Let me look at the light. Where is it gonna be by this time? Okay, cool. Because sometimes you don't have a lot of time to get these shots. They're like, oh, they're already irritable, blah, blah, blah. Like you're creating with another person. And the fact that I love about Jaden is like, he took the value and like, this is a mutual collaboration. This isn't somebody just photographing me. Yeah, it's like, you're only going to get the best that I give you. Like you're giving me something and I'm giving you something in return. So it very much happens in that cyclical way where it's a cycle. So it's like, this is a give and take, you know what I mean? Rather than like, this person's taking my time, they're taking, my joy, they take, like I'm here in this hot weather. Like he could have taken a whole bunch of ways, but it goes to show like, as a creative, he thought about it, was like, I'm only going to get the greatest images that I put out there. Like, and that's that, right? So like me saying yes to his work, him saying yes to my work shows the archive, right? Like 30 years from now, when they think like, okay, we're going to look at what Jaden Smith was doing, or like years and years and years later, they'll be able to identify images like we created together. And I would be super, super proud to just know like we created something like this in this moment, in this time, especially. Just made me really, really happy. Like I just ran back to my hotel room and I was like, thank you, God. Like I'm like, that was amazing. I was in my, like, it felt like LeBron James. I was just in my bag. Like nothing could stop me from set to set. Like it was just like, we probably timed for like 30 minutes on each set. I probably needed like 5, maybe if most 10. Just went from place to place and knew exactly what I was going to get, but as well as what he was going to give me. So it was like, to have him be on board is really, really important as well. Like he knew, like, I also control 50% of what this looks like. So the other 50% is with the photographer and the image maker. The other 50% was with myself and what I kind of give. And I didn't really have to give that much direction. I was giving direction like, hey, maybe eyes here, head tilt, chin up, back straight, blah, blah, blah. But like everything else was just him just flowing and being present, like within like just him just taking up space in a way that I just haven't seen. And it goes to show like he is Jaden Smith. Like he is, you know what I mean? Like from Jada and Wilson, like there's a certain energy there that he's able to occupy and understand the privilege, but also the fact that there's very much an everyday perspective on how he treats people. Like you're not better than anybody because of the privilege or access you have. If anything, it should humanize you more to understand you know, the complexities and nuances of what it means to be Black in America, period.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're seeing at the highest levels, quote unquote, like you're getting the privilege, so you got to see the difference even sharper. You know, almost reminds me of something Quincy Jones once said, like at a BET Awards show. He was just like, you know, for you to, you know, there's people all over this world. He's just quoting him verbatim, like there's people all over this world who wish they had one person that loved them, you know, and in the fact that, you know, these certain individuals, talking about leaders or celebrities and so forth and so on, have millions of people that love them. It's something that should be like really honored
Oof.
and appreciated.
Wow.
You know, like it's something that you should really like internalize and realize how much of a gift that is. And I'm sure it's annoying to have people constantly wanting a piece of you, and every day that you can make somebody else's day the best day of their life. But you know, the fact that he's living so clear at such a young age is just really beautiful. And
it's scary. It's scary. It's aspirational. It's amazing. Like, I'm inspired by that shoot. I'm very much inspired by that shoot, what took place, because of what you're saying. Like, the fact that you give so much to the public, you give so much to people, like you only have so much to retain for yourself. So like when you get in spaces like that, you know, it's not out of character for them to be like, oh, you know, I'm just going to do this and do that. And what, like, I've been on other sets where it's just like, you know, the talent didn't necessarily say anything to me. Like, they didn't talk, you know what I mean? Like, and that's, you know, that's the way.
Because like photography nowadays, just to talk on that thing, it's like, because everyone has a camera, because everyone can like make a great Instagram photo, you know, even like really good ones sometimes, or maybe they have their personal photographers. I just wonder in certain respects is like the photographer or photography in general being devalued. Because I get it from my perspective. If somebody asks me, I think so. I think there's so much phenomenal, good, otherworldly wizardry. Like every time I open my phone, you know, to go check Instagram, whatever that is, every other day. Like
That's a fact.
I see an image that 10 years ago I would have been on the floor. I'd have showed. I'd have been like, yo, look, you got to see this photo. And now it's just like every day, because there's so many people and there's so much talent.
Yeah.
Where like it's been raised. It's almost like, you know, basketball. Everybody can shoot a 3-pointer now, where everybody can dunk or something like that. It's like literally. So like you got to make. It's almost like you got to make a 4-point line. Okay, we got the movies. My man, the director over here. But it's almost like that's what I'm seeing now. But there's definitely like a hierarchy of like creative. I know I've been saying that in the behind the scenes a lot. Like, you know, like you, Trav, Adrian's, and other people like that, because they're so known for so many years. You know, and there's tons of other people like just of all different.
Oh, yeah, there's so many. There's
like hard to break in.
Kaya Carter, Andre Wagner,
Dre, you know, like
Kennedy Carter's. There's like Raheem. Yeah, like and so many people that I just discovered day to day, and I'm just like, this person's amazing.
We will be here. I mean, like we'll be here forever. You know, Lawrence. I mean, like we will be here
Lawrence,
forever.
Joseph,
you know, Dion. You know, like, we could be here forever. There's literally so many people. Quill,
and that,
you know, Tyler,
Quill's amazing. Tyler, of course, Tyler.
You know, Tyler
that's it. Just makes it cool. Yeah, Nadine, Campbell. But also people that a lot of people don't know. There's tons of folks that we all haven't discovered yet that are moving into their greatness. And it's just a pleasure to even be in the same space. Like I know people like, oh, Jesse, you're probably like, yo, stop that fake humble, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, like it's really a pleasure to be in a space and to do the work as long and still be in a space where people value the work, right? Like, you know, prior to everything that's kind of happened with BLM and all this stuff, like the work felt the same, you know what I mean? Like the narratives and the stories that inspire me is still very much the narratives and the stories that inspire me today. Like, and I hope they are when like 80 years from now. Like, if I could just continue to take photographs, tell stories visually, motion-wise, direct movies, films, narratives, documentaries that relate to us, even if I'm 90, that's all I want to do. Like, that's literally I like, and that just makes me happy, right? Like to build that type of rapport and work, to know that at the age of 30, you're still in the beginning. At the age of 20, you're still in the beginning. At the age of 40, you're still in the beginning. Like, you still have at least 20, 30 more years to be able to do what you're going to do. And like a lot of times, because of the immediacy of social media, we feel like, damn, like I'm 26 and like I didn't get it yet because this person's 26 and they're doing this. Like, the comparative nature of social media is like toxic within itself, right? Like, it's used to inspire, but it shouldn't be used to kind of like, you know, be critical of yourself in a way that doesn't grow you. So it's just really, really important to know, like, yo, you know, certain people become president at, you know, at 60, other people become president at 50 or 45, like, but you still have that role and narrative of what you can do and your ability to function in those spaces. So I think it's really, really important to be like, yeah, somebody could have an amazing year at 50 that somebody wished they had at 30. You know, it's just like, just not losing hope in what you want and the things that make you happy. You just have to make sure the things that make you happy actually make you happy and not just the people around you. So it's like, what does that fulfillment really look like when it's not necessarily, I don't know, outward validation in a space? Like that's going to always change, right? But because your own internal validation of why you're doing it, what you're doing actually hits the space where you don't need to have that. And it's important. Like I struggle with that, like in every other artist where it's like, oh man, I wish I was XYZ and this and that. But I know that, like, I know at the core, when people connect with my work, whether people within our community, like young people, older people, like just the fact that I'm being able to create these relationships is so important to me. And that's what makes me happy. So to have a relationship with Jaden through this creative shoot makes me very happy, but also to have a relationship with, Joseph, a kid I photographed in Ghana, and I love that photo, but knowing that like that photograph may have helped him discover a little bit more about modeling or art. And like now he's like killing it on all these runways and stuff, but it's just like, yeah, like I hope the lens, is able to not only humanize, not only justify, but also like just literally show light, right? Like you're chasing light with this camera. Like there's a lot of darkness. So with this camera, you hope to bring light, right? You hope to bring more definition. So that's like really my main goal when it comes to dark content, right? Like you're gonna call this content dark, cool. We're just gonna bring the most light you've ever seen, right?
Mm-hmm. That's fire. Like, I mean, there's a lot of gems on what you just said, by the way. A lot of gems.
No, bro, I'm like, bro, if we're gonna just go off the whatever, I'm just chilling.
Yeah, just like, we definitely in that element. But I gotta say, like, just regards, just because I mean, I think we're personally, just from a creative perspective, I think we're on like two opposite ends of the spectrum. I feel like I probably started like 10 years ago with y'all. Yeah, it's like because of my like choice to go, maybe just forced choice to go towards the corporate route versus the completely like artistic route that you went into, that you immersed yourself in, and other friends of ours did. It's almost like in my mind when I think about it, like I'm starting from that young artist's perspective of like, okay, I got a little thing here, I got a little audience, but how do I then take that to the next level? And I can imagine, because it's something I struggle with, like, okay, how do I get more people to see this book? How do I get, the conversations that I want to have out there? Like this book, this conversation that we're having, it's all just me asking myself, like, what do I want to do for the next 50 years that I wouldn't be, or like, considerable amount of time, but the next 50 years that I want to do every day, that I would love to do the hard parts of it, that I literally embrace the journey of it. Like, what do I love so much that the shit that I hate, I love to do anyway? Like writing is hard, and I can't tell you the way I get from like putting two good words together that makes sense, and then be like, yeah, okay, only 1,000.
You be dropping the gems, man. You're genius. And genius is. And no, sorry, I'm not gonna cut you off. But I have to. I just really want people to know, like, the work you've created over the years, over this past decade, has been some of the best work I've seen, period. Right? Like from Lay on Bone, from Avid Outfit to Lay on Bone to SHEREN, like it's always been about people, right? Like you just pick up tools and you be like, yo, I want to create a definition to what this looks like. Like you chase those feelings, you learn about the camera, you research, like you apply it, and like that's always been something that's so beautiful within your genius. And just like before you even picked up any of those tools, it was just your words, right? Like the hardest part for a lot of artists is expressing themselves. So that's why they have the paintbrush. That's why they have the camera. But like your gift for words and understanding like different dynamics at play, the research that you do is just like bar none. I've never seen it. It's inspired me throughout the past 10 years or so to just be able to be greater, to be able to be more intellectual about what you're looking at, how do you look at that from different perspectives, but not intellectual in a way that isolates people, but intellectual in a way that welcomes people in. Like, how do you bring you into this, right? Like, this is not about I'm in this space and I'm smart here and all these smart people around me, but it's like, no. Like, I'm using this as a tool to connect more and more people to understand themselves, but as well for me to understand myself, because I'm still a student within it. And I've seen that within your work, period, right? So I think people really, I'm not trying to gas it or like just be like, yo, but like absolutely need to realize the genius in with who you are as like Cleon Gray, right? Like as a person, as a creative, as somebody that has learned jobs that they didn't necessarily go to school for, but still learned it, became a master at it, right? So it's like always starting out from the student perspective, I think is really, really important, because as soon as you're a master, you're bored of it already, you know it already. So like, why do you be in a room? Why do you try to, risk doing that new program or risk doing that new article or risk doing that new photograph when you know everything already, you've done everything already? But it's that in-between space is, I think, the most valuable part of what you do, because it really lets people connect to, like, this isn't just about clout. This isn't about who you know. This is really about the art itself, and the fact that somebody wakes up every day and this is what makes them happy to do, like, literally, right? So I think there's just a genius within that, and what you presented over this past decade, whether people see it or not. Like, these are the platforms, these are the stories, these are the things that people are going to truly find, that they need to go back and do their research on all these things you've done up until this point, right? So just want to say that for people to know. And, like, I know I've done a lot of things, other people have done a lot of things, like, that's great, but, like, you really have to look at the character of a person and what they've been able to present time and time again to be in an industry, or to aspire to do the things that they want to do, even though there's so much challenges that come with that. So I just think, like, people need to value that. People need to value SHEREN. People need to value your story, where you've come from, and where you're going to continue to go. So it's just an honor, bro.
I appreciate that, bro. Thank you. Like, seriously, like, I'm on my phone.
No, it's real, bro. It's like
that alone, honestly, is like, it means a lot coming from, you know, it means a lot coming from you. It means a lot coming from anyone, but, like, it means something special coming from you, because it's just, I think a lot of people, myself included, look to you as, like, you know, you're the person who ushered in a lot of these activities for a lot of us, you know, just even be able to dream the way that we can dream about having a career or having a creative career. Like, people don't realize that first, like, Adidas thing, that connection of, like, oh, these are two kids from the Bronx who are gonna get a 6-figure deal or so with Adidas for a multi-year contract, that they're gonna, like, do clothing and, you know, art direction and editorial. Like, that allowed for these sort of brand partnerships to where, like, somebody who can pick up a camera anywhere in the world right now, someplace in Ghana, think about that, someplace in Ghana, and get a Prince, like, in Ghana, with a camera with the iPhone, does something with Apple on a global, you know, like, that's crazy. Like, those situations are, like, ushered in by the work that you and Trav and our friends network has done, and other people that picked up the baton and pushed it further, obviously, in different areas. But I just want to say thank you for that, because sometimes, and I think a lot of, like, artists who just, you know, they're doing it for the passion of what they're doing the things they love doing for the passion of doing it, but not realizing what the end inside is. And, you know, you get old and you got bills, you got to pay this stuff. Like, these places ain't free. Like, you know, healthcare ain't free. Like, rent ain't free. Like, these things are, like, things that are pressing on your neck, particularly in days days and, you know, economic situations like we are in now. And it's just like, sometimes you almost just wonder, other than, like, the joy it gives you, but, like, should I be spending more time on things that seem more, you know, by conventional standards, more like more capital oriented or more commercial? Like, this thing over here could help me pay my rent a lot quicker than this thing over here. Like, this thing is only, and for me, like, the decision is very clear. It's just like knowing that, do you have enough, not just for this moment, but for next year and the year after? And what I've had to tell myself is, like, a lot of this stuff is a balance, but sometimes it's just a risk. People just did things at different times because they just loved it enough and believed it enough that they were going to force other people believe in it too. And they were going to, like, forget asking for your attention. They were going to command your attention. Yeah. And sometimes you don't know whether that work is going to warrant it. And I think that's something that people always, that's what your belief has to be at a high ass level, because it's like, there's tons of people that believe just as much as others who are successful believe, but they didn't make it because maybe the work didn't connect. Maybe they weren't there at the right time. And it's for me, because I'm a person who needs to, like, think about every single thing in the world. Sometimes I find it difficult to focus on the possibility of the right outcome versus the multitudes of potential pitfalls. And I'm always, like, thinking about the downside risk. And sometimes I wonder, like, does that consideration of the downside risk, like, take time away and shine away, energy away from the upside? And I feel like that's true, but a crack. Y'all give me a crack, a smidgen, I'm walking through that door and I'm running through it. I'm not looking back. But I just wonder sometimes, because it's like, I feel like nobody has an answer, but it is interesting to guess, like, if I'm a photographer right now, which I'm not, but if I'm a photographer right now or any artist trying to do something this day and age, how do I get the looks? How do I get the eyes? How do I get someone to take a look at it? Sometimes it could be, you know, you pay for marketing. Sometimes the work can be luckily undeniable. Maybe you catch a wave and you happen to have created that thing for a while or even a short period of time that people just started taking a look at, and you happen to be the one who got it. You know, like, things just align sometimes. And it's just like, for the person who may feel like they're out of alignment, how do they get things aligned? Is it just creating relationships, creating other forms of opportunities? Because, you know, like, I heard something recently where someone said, rather than going out and trying to search for your purpose, create your purpose, like create it, like create your meaning, create your purpose. Don't look for, you're not going to find some shit in the woods, behind a tree, under a stone, under a rock. And there goes, look at it. I found my purpose. I found the thing that I was searching for. You got to go out and create it. But I think in the second stage of that, the creation of purpose, it's like, how do I let this thing sustain me? How does this thing feed me? How do I pay my bills, get a family? How do I get the other things that most people want within that purpose? Mm-hmm. And that's always a struggle for me. It's like you want the purpose, but you also want some sort of like, you do want to be able to like sustain yourself. And at times, I'm sure for a lot of artists, maybe that's starting artist trope, but sometimes I feel like both can't happen. You can't have your love. You can't have a love and I don't know, a couch. Yeah, maybe it's not the case, but it just seemed like there is, for as many people that you've admitted to like having out there that are working and existing, I think about those getting like the 6 figures and the 7 figures. And of course, there's always somebody making more money than you, but those is making the thousands and the hundreds or the zeros. And it's like, what would I tell somebody, myself included, who's at that low 4-figure level, that small level with the artwork? How do you get it to that 5-figure level? And maybe it's just time. Maybe, life is just in such a way where the energies that are correct and the way things are supposed to work, they just end up working that way. But it's like, is there anything that would you give somebody else about like how to push that future into existence?
That's a question?
Yeah, like if you were starting right now and weren't Joshua Kissi, you're just the dude that took your photos, and rather than having like 120,000 followers, you had 1,234 followers. What would you be doing?
Wow. That's a great question. The crazy thing is like, yeah, it's hard, right? Because like, I'm only operating on what I know now, and what I know now has grown from what I knew then. So I still think of myself as a student of the game, no matter what. I'm like, I'm still learning. I'm still trying out different programs. When I walk into the room, I aspire to be the best, but even when I'm not the best, I'm still content with that because I know that's a place to learn. I know that's a place to grow. So if the shoe was on the other foot and I was very much like, even just thinking through all of this, the only reason, and this is going to sound crazy, people are not going to believe me, the only reason I've achieved or been able to go from space to space or understand art and creativity and storytelling is because of people. Like, my gift is connecting with people, like, and how I connect with them, period. Like, I could have been a writer and have the same type of appetite for meeting people, for spending time with people, for forming community, for asking myself the hard questions. It's just the tool that I was given was a camera instead of a pen, right? It's a different type of communicative tool. So if I was starting out today, I would still very much so find my people. Like, that's what I did. Like, when me and Trav became friends in high school, like, that was the connection I was born. It's like, I'm finding somebody that also have a connection to something we're both interested in. So like, that tribe aspect is so important, right? Because from a tribe, you build your customs, you build your understandings, you build your ceremonials. Like, there's almost an ecosystem within itself from person to person. All you need is 2 people, because it just can't happen by itself. Like, you could do everything you want to do in the silos and be the illest artist to ever exist within this one white room. But for me, I knew that if I'm not communicating what I want to another person, and that person mutually communicating what they want to me, and us agreeing to doing it together, then also getting a 3rd person, a 5th person, a 10th person, 11th, like, and it just been able to build up. That's what it was. Like, in some part of me, the places I struggle, because I love people also become the biggest challenge, right? When it's like, okay, like, the relationship dynamic of things, like, how do you deal with, tension within relationships? How do you deal with old relationships, new relationships? How you, like, all the aspects of people existing. I feel like that's the whole reason why we're on this earth. Like, if we're just here by ourselves, like, that's just that. But the fact that you get to create memories with other people, whether you're related to them or not, you get to create lasting memories is the gift. Like, and I feel like from growing up in a pastor's house, growing up in a with the mother that just cares for people, right? Like, all these different aspects, like, it just made me into the person I am. And it was just through people. Like, I don't think I've been nowhere where I'm at today if it wasn't for Travis or Karen or a Micaiah, or like, you know what I mean, yourself as well. You know what I mean? But even from a work perspective, I'm like, it's always been people. Like I've done nothing on myself. Like there's always been somebody else that I've been able to bounce information off of and be like, okay, cool, awesome. Like this is the route we need to take, or this is the route we need to take. Like in order to be a leader, you got to build up other leaders, right? Like not build up followers. And that's one thing I knew was really important to my career, to let people know, like, you could also do this. Like, I'm not special, esoteric, floating figure where things just get to happen. I understand my privilege. I understand the access and the success I've had, but it's only because of people and the relationships I've been able to do that. So like at the core of me, whether I had 0 followers or 100,000 followers, my connection to people would have been constant. Like I knew like I need to build up people around me that support me to be the best me. And in turn, I support them to be the best them. Like at the core, like that's literally been my whole shit. Like
message right there.
Like that's it. I don't know anything other, like, and people have taught me about myself. They taught me about themselves. They taught me about art, creativity, stories, travels, you know, new books. But like, it's only been because of people, like in community. Like that's literally it. With when you find your tribe, you know, you develop your culture. You develop what, you know, like you literally begin to build your own village in a sense, right? Like if you got to build this digital village, it started out with me and another person, but now there's like hundreds of people that occupy this town or this city or this, you know, now it's grown from a village to a whole bustling city where you have a whole bunch of creatives trading ideas, trading secrets. You have people that are doing this and doing that. Like a whole society is like developed, right? Just because you had an idea to accomplish something.
That's an interesting way to put it, because in a way, if you think about it from like the genesis of like the early street etiquette ideas, it's like you've spanned out and created a sort of like digital Wakanda of like, you know, creative. You know,
so I mean, there's definitely like, and much, you know, I don't want people to think like, much respect to the Gordon Parks, to the Jamel Shabazzes, right? Like that have created a world before I was even born, right? And even their ancestors before them that have created, right? So like, for the ability for me to have my phone and pick up the phone and call a Jamel Shabazz and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this element of, you know, photography. I'm struggling with this, you know, this commerce versus art aspect of photography. Like, and him speak his full truth is literally one of the biggest blessings I could ever have. So it's like, once you get the elders in the space, you get the youth, like that village turns into a city. Like, and it could still has the things that make it special. But you're right. This at least from a digital perspective, when it comes to like Madbury and street etiquette and a lot of the things that are born from that era, like we got to build a town. Like it was like a town hall meeting of like creatives, right? Like globally, right? Like no matter if you're in Joburg or Brazil or Compton or the Bronx or Chicago or Jamaica, like you got to see yourself within something and like become that with those people. So when I ask myself what I've been doing today, if I didn't have the hundreds of thousands of followers, is still continue to build those relationships, still continue to work on those relationships, whether work beneficial or like personal beneficial. If both happens, that's amazing. But like you pour and give into each other. Like that's literally it. That's what's only got me to this point. Art is people. Like that's literally it.
I feel like that's the message. I feel like the thing that we have the most in common, you know, all those manifested differently, both of us, is like this fundamental belief that like people are everything. Sharing is everything. Exchange is everything. Community is everything.
Literally sharing.
Like literally sharing. Like nothing has any value. You know, that's the whole point of the book. Like it has a deeper point, which I found out in a conversation with somebody like a couple of weeks ago, which was crazy. But like the original purpose was like, you know, sharing is everything. Like nothing has any sort of meaning until I give it to somebody else. I learned a recipe.
Boom. That's not like literally that point alone is like could be written on a shirt and I'll wear it. Nothing has no meaning until I share it with somebody else.
Nothing has meaning. Nothing has purpose. Nothing has value until I share it with someone else. It's like literally whether it's an idea, a book, a photo, anything. Like nothing has any meaning until I share it with someone else. Of course, like, oh, if I'm in the woods and someone gives me, I don't know, something to eat, yeah, I ate it, great, it has meaning. But it's like as far as like how do you build that community? It's from sharing. How do you get more than one person to elevate? Like you even said a gem before. You know, as a leader, your point is to like create other leaders, foster other leaders, not followers. You know, and that's a completely different way of thinking, which I hope let's on a societal level, we need to start trying to like flesh out and realize like, you know, you as a leader, like your strength is literally reflective of those that you have amongst you, not just under you, amongst you. Like you as a parent, a man, a president, a leader, a boss, a woman, you know, like for you, you are a reflection of those that you are in service to, you know, and if
Yeah,
they're
I'm in
not,
service. I'm
they're
in
not
service to the community. Like I'm
yeah.
in the leadership role doesn't happen in a way that's like this hierarchical,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm on top, people on bottom. Hell no, I hate that. I hate the thought of that.
Next.
What I'm thinking is more so like I'm in servitude to the community that has been in servitude to me, like in service to me in general. So it's like I'm only going based on the work that people have inspired me to do. Like in turn, right? Like we had that connection, we have that bond, and like leaders are able to lead me in different directions. Like other people that like I'm not building up somebody to just follow, right? But like, hey, just follow what I'm doing. Just do it. Like, no. Like absolutely, you lead as well when I can't lead. When I'm tired, you lead, right? Like, and I'll follow your mark and your aspiration to where things could go. So like, I think that's really important element, especially now because followers have been commodified and capitalized into social media presence, where it's like you need more followers, and like that has a whole other thing within like you think you need to lead followers instead of leading leaders and leading people who are complete already. Like, you know, these are not like the scarcity lack mindset where it's like, I need you to do this. It's like you have the gifts within what you want to do within yourself. Just know that.
I think that's something that we need to all like hold on to a bit more, because even for all the stuff that I'm talking about, creativity and art, like there just comes like for me in my personal way of living through life, like I feel like I got all the tools to get me to the finish line. You know, like of course you're gonna keep learning, of course you're gonna keep growing, of course you're gonna make mistakes, but as far as like being able to exist, I have everything that I need. And I think sometimes we're led to believe that we are lacking, and not just as Black people, just as people in general. And we need to fill those things, but fill those holes and gaps and voids in our quote unquote selves with either things or like accolades or trophies or whatever. And we're not heading in that direction the way technology's flexing and going. And you know, we got neural nets and Teslas and automotive cars and like autonomous driving and all this type of stuff that we're building. We're getting to a place of like, you know, digital bodies and digital beings and digital ways of being, and we're getting more reliant on these devices. I know that, but I just hope, you know, if we learn anything from this moment is that, you know, we need people more than anything else. The fact that people have really lost their mind just because they couldn't be around people when you really boil down to it just kind of shows like the true nature of humanity. We built these sort of myths called money and myths called capital, and you know, these other things that we've done to kind of distract us from like what really the most important thing is just like you connecting with people, you being around folks and sharing ideas and sharing things that are beneficial to get us from point A to point B. I'm moving to my couch, point A to point B. And I just hope that in the future we just get back to realizing that. I've been watching like old 90s videos and Donald Jones videos. I'm like, damn, I just want to go to like an underground club and like have a nice drink, and not even drink, you know, have a nice drink, be around some people and just like, you know, just dance and be amongst one another and like not lose that touch and that humanity, and just realize that everything that you're saying, I'm saying as well. But like, this all comes back down to the people. I remember when I was doing Abder Alpha back in the day, and I was thinking about like literally graduating college, like what I'm gonna do. And I remember I said, I want to meet new people, and I want to be able to travel at some point in time if this goes well. That was literally the two things I said to myself. That was all it is, a way to make friends and a way to hopefully travel. All that stuff took a while, but it's like photography just happened to become the outgrowth of that. Doing the style stuff and the fashion stuff, it was just a means to an end. But it always was like, I get to meet new people, met all these other people that I know now. And eventually started traveling like a year ago, but you know, 2 years ago, whenever it was. But it's like, it just, I didn't even go in these places I want to go. But even still, it was always about meeting people, because I understood that all equity that exists in humanity and life, and no matter how many things that we build, all come back down to people. We are the source. We are the code. We are not, you know, we are everything in that sense. You know, seriously, like we are the everything of everything. It begins with us. It ends with us. In the middle, it is us. And I just hope, because I know some of these conversations sometimes feel like pie in the sky, fluffy, great, but then you like turn around, you got to go pay your bills. But I just hope people realize that in amongst all the hardships that we think we have and the things that we think that we deserve or we don't have, I just hope that we realize that at the end of the day, we all wake up with the same thing in mind for the most part. And that's just to live a better life, to connect a little bit more, to be better than we were yesterday, or at least last year, if not yesterday.
That's a fact.
And hope that we're just moving forward. And, you know, from where the conversation started to where it is now, I generally just want to say that I think on average people where we have so much more in common than we think we do, than what we're led to believe, whether that's based on the news media or just things that we choose to highlight because our brains are just so like wired towards fear, negativity, and like we're like so death centric, so negativity centric that we don't even realize all the 99.9% of our days that are so fabulous versus the 0.01% or the 0.1% that's just like a little bit off. You know, like for every bad story that we hear, think about all the millions of great ones that exist. You know, and I understand that the world doesn't really work like that. We come from a place that we're led to believe that we come from a place of like lack versus abundance. And I even have to tell myself like it's a mind state. Think abundantly. You are abundant. You have all the abundance.
Yeah.
And in that more abundance will reign. And I get it. Sometimes it really sounds like, oh, it's metaphysical, spiritual, blah, blah, blah. But I really believe like it matters. Like, if you believe you have it, people feel that from you. You create relationships more easy. People want to be around you more. You're around more people. There's going to be more opportunities that come to you, more opportunities that come around to you. The more things you get a chance to do, the more things you get to see, the more opportunities to potentially make money. And I feel like your life is almost just a reflection of that. You went into these situations with that abundant mindset. You went into these situations really genuinely wanting to get to know people. And of course, having talents and other things that probably played in your benefit, but it was always this point of positivity. People wanted to be around that. And then when they thought about doing things, it's like, there's more people talking about you right now and having conversations about putting you potentially in things than you can imagine. And it's about just having enough people having those good conversations that your name's involved in that creates those opportunities. We call it quote unquote luck. But really what it is just about your life having a beautiful story attached to it. Your essence having a good story attached to it. When someone thinks about you, they think about good things. When they think about you, they think about someone who can succeed, make me come up to, who can like deliver this project, who has talent, who I want to see win. Because we're at a point in life where it's like everybody can do everything. So those that are going to be the true differentiators are those that people want to be around and those who want to see win. It's a part like whose story do you want to propagate the earth? And you just got to hope that you're creating that story where people want to see that story like just spread. And I guess that story of love, of abundance, of happiness, of joy, of just more humanity, more feeling, more emotion, and more just like more vision, more clarity, more sight. Maybe we can just end on more life, more love. It's kind of cliche.
More life, more love. We can end on that.
I just want
sorry.
No,
you're good.
No, that was basically all
okay. I was just gonna say like I mean, similar to what I was saying earlier, I'm just proud and happy and just, really, really just grateful that I get to play like a role within this, being one of the first people, but of course, like just having people experience this, people have to, like, there's no outlets like this where people are being vulnerable about their creative process, about themselves, what works, what doesn't work, ready to see yourself and things like that. Like, I felt like there's such a missing piece for this type of storytelling to happen. So I'm just glad that this is something that sparked up in your energy to be like, yo, I want to do it. And I want to do it with the people I love. And it is based around community again, like the people you reach out to, the Dre's, the Jessies, the Travs, the people that you have in these spaces that are precious to you, and their stories will be precious to others in turn, right? So being able to grant that gift towards the general pop of people that are looking for this interaction is like major. Like it's major. So I'm just proud and grateful to be a part. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, bro. And just to say lastly, like seriously, thank you for like just always like shining a light and spreading your light to others. Like they're just sharing that spotlight, bro. And it's important because a lot of people need it. And that was like the goal of the whole entire show. I remember when I was talking about the book before, and I was just saying like, how do I get into a place where every time I do something, I'm not like asking for attention, because I don't like, reckless attention where I'm always in somebody's face. But what I realized is that I love conversations. Like I love conversations more than anything else in the world. So I don't know how I haven't even started this before. It was just like trying to make things perfect and not realizing you can build into perfection. Maybe we build a studio one day, but let's just start the conversation now. And what I really wanted was just a place for the person who's like me, who has that thing that they want to share, that photograph, that photography that they don't have anybody else going and take a look at. And of course, it's going to get a lot more interactive. We're going to be sharing screens and eventually going into people's like computers and like seeing their.
I love that. No, I love that
stuff. But it was just like a place where people could share the things that they really fucked with. There is no, just to use other examples, but there is no podcast truly at this sort of like level where you could just have like a small following or a big following. But I just want to, if you have work that engages me and engages with the community and you have something to say, like I just want to have a place where that light can be shined on as well. And let's just keep it going. I really want this to be a space where people can truly feel like, one, they can have an open conversation, a real conversation, but beyond that, where they can feel like they're elevated, where they don't have to be, or me or Joshua Kissi or Jaden Smith or whoever to feel like work if it's good.
So true.
Can't get a couple of minutes of just talking or can't get a little bit of shine. And that's when I keep creating things like that, whether it's, seeing Black as an extension of that, Tone is an extension of that. It's like just keep creating these things where people can feel seen, where we don't feel like we're operating from a place of scarcity. And why can't, I don't understand why we can't create our own platforms. Why can't it be us? Why can't this be as big as what we want it to be? And just have a place where, any one of our friends or any person that could be a new friend can just drop something and we can have that conversation and, hundreds of thousands or millions of people can see it and they get to shine. And it can just be equitable in that. It can just be real, energy and talent based. So and hopefully we can keep building and you guys keep rocking. Josh will be back soon.
I'll be back. I'll be a reoccurring guest. Like, don't worry about me. I'm around.
But, this has been SHEREN. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bro.